everyone. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to IPSI's Forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I am your host, Joshua Washington, the Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. And I'm happy to be here with you today. Once again, it is just me today. We're going to get into some pretty. We're going to get into some topics today. So I hope you guys have your seatbelts strapped in and your keyboards ready for questions and comments and all that stuff. We're gonna get into it in just a moment. That theme song you heard is called "The First 7 Miles." It is from an album entitled "Simcha" by Randy Sandoli. Randy Sandoli is a jazz pianist and composer who gets a lot of his stylings from his upbringing in jazz and also his inspiration from Middle Eastern and Middle Eastern jazz music. Randy is a very prolific composer and arranger, and he's a great friend of IPSI's. You can check out his album everywhere. It's on all streaming platforms. If this is your first time checking us out and you don't know who IPSI is, maybe your friend told you to come check it out, or you just happen to stumble upon this, you can find out more about us at ibsi.org. You can visit our website. You can learn more about what we do what we do, why IPSI was started. You can check out the documents. We have content on there as well. If you want to go deeper into the things that are messaging and what we talk about, you can go to ibsi.substack.com. You can scan the QR code you see right in front of you, and you can subscribe to our Substack. You can be a free subscriber. You can be a paid subscriber. As a matter of fact, scan it right now. If you are already a free subscriber, I encourage you to upgrade, be a monthly paid subscriber or an annual paid subscriber. All that helps IPSI in the content that we put out. Speaking of supporting IPSI, you can also become a legacy builder. A legacy builder is someone who gives a monthly amount, something that they're able to give. You know, we've had legacy builders start off with giving like $15, $20 a month. Some of them now give closer to $100 a month. It really is what you are able to do. But those monthly donations are really a huge help for IPSI. And if you don't think you maybe have the capacity to do something regularly, then you can give a one-time donation. Go to ibsi.org/donate. Your donations, they help us do what we do. They help us to travel to the places we need to go to do events. You guys, for some of our events, depending on the nature of our events, there are a lot of events that we do that we don't charge um, because of whether it's our audience or the messaging we're trying to get out. Some we do, some we don't, especially when it comes to us going into whether it's the our own communities in the Black church space or the Black communities. Depending on what it is that's going on, we'll often just go because that's something we feel we need to do. And so your donations actually help us to be able to give of our time and our resources, and continue to strengthen the bonds and the relationship between the Black and Jewish community and between Africa and Israel. Good evening, Pastor Matrilla Hall. I see you on YouTube, ma'am. If you guys are watching this and you want to say hey, go ahead and say hey. I'll give you a shout out. Pastor Matrilla Hall, thank you for being one of our IPSI pastors. Pastor Matrilla Hall, she's down in Atlanta. Her church down there, she's amazing. She's a force to be reckoned with. And we are always lucky to have her whenever she is with us, whenever she joins us. It's always a blessing. So thank you for joining us again, Pastor Matrilla Hall. You guys, you can also visit our merchandise store. So if you want to support IPSI and you want to have something to show for it, you can order one of these Legacy Builder shirts. You can also there's mugs and there's journals and there's other things that you get. There's water bottles and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to support IPSI and you want to have something to show for it, consider going to our store and purchasing one of our many merchandise items that we have there, including Zionism, the Black Church, which was written by our CEO and founder, Pastor Dumisani Washington. Okay, quick announcements. Just a reminder, it's not a live event, but we're excited. We love to partner with our friends at PragerU. In just a couple of months, I'll be in LA with Marissa Streit, talking with her on Prager University about the African Jewish Alliance, about our work with AJA, why it's so important. And so it's not a live event, but just support the African Jewish Alliance. So if you've never heard of that organization before, it was started by our good friend Charles Jacobs. Our CEO is also a founding member, and it's an organization that is dedicated to abolishing slavery in Africa. Charles Jacobs has been doing this for decades under multiple organizations and partnering with other organizations that are led by Africans. Some are former slaves, some have witnessed jihad on their own growing up, and so Charles Jacobs, along with other African leaders, have formed this group called the African Jewish Alliance. And the goal is to abolish slavery on the African continent. He's done tireless work over the decades, and we're excited to partner with him in that. I proudly serve as the Speakers Bureau Chief of AJA, helping with some of the video content and the speakers that we do have. And so if you want to follow the events we have coming up with them, you can go to ibsi.org/dates. Check that out. And if you want to book AJA for something, you can also reach out. Go to the website, African Jewish Alliance, African Jewish Alliance.org, I believe. And you can reach out to someone, and African Jewish Alliance.org. You can reach out to someone, and we can set up an event. We have, like I said, some of the people on our team. Simon Dang, who is a former slave from Sudan. He lives here in the U.S. now. Has a very, very moving story, and not just what he went through, but what he has done in those years, as a political activist, as a force to end slavery, both in South Sudan and all over the continent. And we have other leaders as well from Nigeria, from Mauritania, and again, people who have either experienced slavery or have experienced Islamic jihad in their villages, in their towns, in their cities. So I'm really excited to be on, like I said, PragerU's platform to continue to share the work of AJA. And if you want to give and support AJA, you can go to givebutter.com/AJA and continue to help our efforts to do that. All right, you guys, that's the first announcement. Next one is on the 17th of December. There is an event happening. Okay. Well, that popped up. I'll talk about that first. So on the 12th of December, we have an event. It's for our donors. So if you are a donor, if you are someone who gives to IPSI regularly, this is for you. It's an event called What We See on the Horizon. To learn more about it, you can scan it and read more. It is exactly about that. We're going to be talking about what IPSI sees on the horizon when it comes to Israel advocacy, about how the U.S.-Israel relationship being a matter of national security, and we're going to be going really deep into there. So if you want to be a part of that, it's virtual. Join us and learn more. On the 17th of December, there's a book that my co-host who's usually here but not here today, and our Speakers Bureau Chief, Olga Mitroy Washington, and I co-authored, called Israel the Miracle. It's actually right behind me. And the book has about 75 different authors. We're very privileged and honored to be a part of this, to be two of the authors. There's some incredible names on that book. If you've never heard of it before, you can order it, Israel the Miracle. Well, the is it progenitor, the leader, the person who spearheaded this whole thing, this whole book, his name is Jonathan Feldstein. Jonathan Feldstein is he's the head of an organization called the Genesis 123 Project, and we are doing a live event with him in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so if you are in Charlotte and you want to know about it, if you want to know what's going on, it should be on our website, but it may not be right now, but it will be tomorrow. By the time you watch this, if it's Tuesday and you're watching this, it's up on our website. You can join, register, be a part of it. He's going to be there. He is an incredible man. He's an Orthodox Jewish man, of the visionary behind the book. He's the president of the Genesis 123 Foundation, and his mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. We love working with Jonathan Feldstein. He is an incredible human being, and we're looking forward to that event. So if you are in Charlotte, Mark your calendars, December 17th. More details will be given soon in terms of location and all that stuff, but we'd love to see you. All right, let's get into it today, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to start off here with what happened here at the United Nations. Um, there was a United Nations. Sorry, something froze here. There we go. Apologize, you guys. So there was a hearing in the United Nations about basically the word genocide, whether or not Israel was committing a genocide, and it was headed up by the prevention of genocide, right? So the UN special advisor on the prevention of genocide, there was a group in the United Nations that actually came together to discuss whether or not Israel is committing genocide, and a lot of people said yes, but there was one notable official who she was, I should say, the Undersecretary General and the Special Advisor. Her name was Alice Wairimu Nderitu. Now, Alice Wairimu Nderitu. She was fired for not classifying Israel's conduct in Gaza as genocide. Now, listen to this, because this is her reasoning. And we talked about this a few weeks ago with a different African official who refused to condemn Israel. Her reasoning in this, and this is something that we talk about over and over again. So there's this hearing that was going on, and one of the few things that she cites is that genocide has a very specific thing, right? Has a very specific definition. It requires intent. Also, so right, even so, there has to be also prove intent to commit genocide first of all, but also it has to do with numbers and all those kind of things. And so it's a very loaded word, and it's a word that's usually used to evoke emotion, but it's also a word, in her opinion, and mine as well, that it gets used so much that it loses its meaning, right? It can't just be thrown around willy-nilly to every single thing that goes on. And so she listed a couple of examples. The Holocaust, or the Shoah, was a genocide, right? 6 million Jews were murdered, 9 million people altogether, and the intent was to eradicate Jews from Europe, right? To rid Europe of its Jews. That was a genocide. She talked about the Rwanda genocide against the Tutsis. In a 100-day period, almost a million, so about 800,000 Tutsis were slaughtered by the Hutus. That is a genocide, right? Because not just the numbers, but the intention. The intention was to wipe out all the Tutsis. The intention was to wipe out all the Jews. Those are genocides. Those are the things that genocides encapsulate. She also referenced the Serbian attacks on Bosnian Muslims, and the killings that are being carried out in Sudan. All these things, both in terms of the number of killings and the intent behind those things, those all qualify as genocide. Now, then she said, with regard to Israel, she said, as a legal matter, establishing a pattern of violence as a genocide requires demonstrating intent. That's what I said. Israel's campaign of self-defense doesn't qualify. Okay? So what she's saying, and again, so we're looking at this. She didn't say Am Yisrael high, and she said, you guys, this doesn't legally fit, right? Israel doesn't have any stated intent to kill all the Palestinians. Their actions on the battlefield don't reflect that, right? They're laser targeting things. The pager thing that happened a couple of months ago, that doesn't line up with wanting to commit a genocide. Why wouldn't they just carpet bomb all of Gaza, right? Also, their biggest, the largest part of their military budget goes to the Iron Dome, which is a defense weapon. It's not an offense weapon. It shoots rockets out of the sky. That there's looking at the numbers, the papers, everything. There's nothing that qualifies as genocide. And so um, that's what that was her assessment. Her assessment was based on history, the like I said, the very strict definition of genocide and what has taken place in the past that does constitute genocide. Based on all those things, she said that's not what's going on in Israel. Well, she was fired. Um, and there was a Wall Street Journal article that wrote about it that said it was very much a political choice. It says beyond Miss Nderitu's fate, the damage here includes defining genocide down. Um, the word has become a weapon of political propaganda that will erode its moral authority when it's needed to describe genuine horrors. And that is kind of the playbook for everything. The word apartheid, the word, so you have apartheid, you have genocide, imperialism, all those things, these words used to carry much more weight. Apartheid was a very specific thing to South Africa, and it was a system of laws. Right now, it just gets thrown around. And Israel's this, and Israel's that, and this, and that. It actually, it doesn't just, it's not just lying on Israel, but it actually cheapens what these people actually went through. Continuing to call what's happening, what the war between Israel and Hamas that Hamas started, right? And now Israel's fighting on several different fronts between other enemy territories, calling that a genocide on Gaza, it pokes fun at it makes frivolous the genocide that happened in Rwanda. It trivializes the genocide that happened during the Holocaust. And that's just the facts. So you can't. I always say, like, even if right, because that's not the case of what's happening now. But even if what's going on is terrible, you can't just hijack another term and say, well, that's what's happening here. I remember I was having a debate with someone because I posted something about why calling Israel apartheid is problematic on several levels. What actually happened in apartheid South Africa, and how it doesn't apply to Israel in many, many ways, right? I mean, the fact that you have Arab judges who can sentence Israelis, Jews, I should say, to prison. The fact that you have representation of all people in the Israeli government, in the Knesset. So going to different things, and I said it just doesn't line up. And this person said to me, South Africa is irrelevant. No one's talking about that anymore. He said what's happening is kind of it's its own kind of form of apartheid. I said you can't do that. That term is not a general term. It's a very specific term that was coined for South Africa because of what was going on in South Africa. You can't say that South Africa is not relevant anymore and then just take that word and use it for something else. It does not apply. It doesn't. That's not what's happening right now. Which is why we came against some of the pro-Israel groups who were trying to flip it and call Gaza an apartheid state and say, oh, we're going to do Palestinian apartheid. We were like, no, you guys, that's not, because it's still not apartheid. See, the answer is not to take it and reappropriate it for yourself. It's to shoot down that whole thing. That word should not be used at all in this scenario because it's not the case. So it is. So it's a shame. What we've been seeing here is, even in the light of Israel being attacked in the International Court of Justice and all those things, there are certain leaders, African leaders, who are standing up, sometimes being a lonely voice, right, to say, no, this is not right. This is not just. So yeah, so that's what's going on right now. We're continuing to follow that. I want to speak to something real quick. I didn't want to share the video. I didn't want to, because I don't want to give this person any more airtime than he already gets. But I want to use it to illustrate a broader point here. So this person, if you can look him up if you want to, his name is Myron Gaines. I've been seeing this video go around, more than one actually, different interviews now, of him just going on this complete and total rant. I mean, just like a tirade. This man straight up, and this is not, I'm talking about throwing words around that don't mean anything. I'm talking very literally when I say this. Literally, it's a very straight out of the Nazi playbook rant about the Jews. This guy talks about feminism and all these isms that are bad, right? Feminism and socialism and communism, all that stuff. all the world's problems, and I'm this is not hyperbole. This is what he says. And you can search his name, you find it. All the world's problems are because of the Jews. Every ailment that we face is the Jews' fault. These are his words. And it's because he called them dreidel spinners. It's because the effing Jews and da 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 da. He listed everything that he thought was wrong with the world and said that it's all the Jews' fault. And he goes on for a few minutes, yelling and screaming and cussing and swearing, all that stuff. And I'm just speaking truth, da 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 da. I was like, wow, wow. And it's interesting to me because there's a couple of things. One of the biggest mistakes that I saw that was made on the left side of the aisle when the squad was being formed, so Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was that there were so many in the Democrat camp that either ignored them or said, they're just small, they're a fringe kind of over there, they'll never really make any traction. Now the squad is right, like over half, I want to say half the Democratic Party. Now the squad is not just this small squad. The squad is this huge group of people. It's getting to the point now where it's almost like in order to kind of keep your Democrat card, as a representative, you kind of have to be anti-Israel, right? There are a couple of exceptions, right? We talk about like someone who stands out a lot, like Richie Torres, right? But other than that, it really is. It gets harder and harder for Democrats to stay in the party if they support Israel. It's just becoming not a thing, right? And along with other radical stuff that's not really supported by people with common sense. What happened is the fringe squad became a big part of the party, and it's pushing the Democratic Party further left than a lot of them really were expecting that they would go. The same thing is going to happen to the right if there is not an unequivocal condemnation and distancing from, and not just distancing from, but calling out and shutting down. And when I say shutting down, I don't mean cutting off their free speech. I'm talking about shutting down, meaning with facts. I'm talking about like humiliating them with the facts. If there is not this same energy, when people like Myron Gaines, who was very fringe, or Nick Fuentes, or now you have, the Hodge twins and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, who make up these falsehoods about Jews in Israel and resurrect these old, just blood libel stories and all this kind of literally, and again, not hyperbole, Nazi playbook stuff. Candace Owens, I talked about it a couple months ago. She was on her podcast resurrecting the blood libel called the Dreyfus, was it the Dreyfus? The Damascus Affairs. And it's a story. It's a story about a guy who made up this story of that Jews use Christians' blood to make their that they dip their matzah in the blood of Christians and they eat them, right? And Candace tells this story as if she's discovering some hidden gem, and is like, "Oh yeah, no, and apparently, no." And when I mean literally out of Nazi playbook, the Nazis used that story as one of the things that they stood on when they started slaughtering the Jews and putting them in ovens, and the Holocaust by bullets that happened in Ukraine. This was one of the things that they would stand on as their reason, their impetus for wanting to eradicate Jews and cleanse the world of Jews. This is what they were standing on, and she's just resurrecting the story like it holds weight, like, oh, there's some truth to it. Why are you even telling that story? Unless you have some mind-blowing new evidence that no one's ever seen before, why in the world would you retell that story? Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in terms of the story itself being false, it being made up, and it being used even then as an excuse to start killing the Jews in there. Why? And it's going to take people on that side of the aisle to not just distance themselves, don't ignore them, call them out for what they are. Otherwise, just like the left side of the aisle is drifting further left, the right side of the aisle is going to continue to drift further right. That's what's going to happen. And it's happening as we speak. And so what Myron Gaines's rant was, it wasn't just Jew hating, anti-Jewish women hating, all that kind of stuff. It's, and I said this before in another video, it's an evil spirit. Why in the world? How can these two opposing political ideologies come together on hating the Jews? It's an anti-God spirit. It's an anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-God spirit, because it doesn't make sense. On the right, the right-wing Jew haters, they say that Jews are the progenitors of communism and socialism, and therefore they're the reason why we have evil in the world. On the left, they say Jews and Israel, they say, are the progenitors of capitalism and and white supremacy, and therefore they're the cause of all the world's problems. How can both sides of this aisle have these conspiracy theories that are so opposite? And how can they not be aware of the other side? Meaning, how about Jews just are like people, where they have political ideologies that differ from each other, like people? I know black communists, I know black capitalists, I know black conservatives, I know black liberals, I know far right Latino people, I know far left. Why is it that when we see someone on the fringes who are in other ethnic groups, we just say that group is dangerous, right? If you're on the left, you'll say, oh, those conservatives. If you're on the right, oh, those liberals, right? But why, when it's the Jews, it's like those Jews? Why? There's no rationale to it. There's no rationale to it. Why is it when we find out on the news about some celebrity who turned out to be a pedophile, if he's not Jewish, it's like, oh, it's a terrible guy. Oh, Hollywood's just all messed up. But if it's a Jewish celebrity, it's all those Jews. Those Jews. Like, well, hold on a second. You didn't say those Asians. You didn't say those blacks. You didn't say that. Oh, see what I'm saying? That it's because there's no rationale to it. It is, for one, it's an excuse to hate Jews, but also it's they don't even fully understand why they keep getting into this current, this stream. It's an evil spirit. And so for those who see what's going on, who see history repeating itself, there's a story from the UK a few days ago. These some of them were Arab migrants. Others were saying that Zionists need to leave London. They need to leave London or be killed. And that article came out a few days ago, and I have friends in London. I was texting them, Jewish friends. They're saying, yeah, no, some of the stuff is close to where they live, so they're a little bit shaken up. And what was interesting to me is that in 1939, 1940, in places like Norway, like in Oslo, I remember there was a sign, someone took a picture of vandalism on a Jewish business display, like a display glass, in front of their business. And it said, Palestine is calling, basically, we need the Jews to get out of Norway. During the pogroms in Germany, there would sometimes be signs that said, Jews go back to Palestine, right? So back then, there was the acknowledgement, and people, even the Jew haters, were aware that Palestine was not an Arab word or an Arab region. They were aware that Jews are from that region that just happens to be called British Mandate Palestine because of the Brits, and they got that name from the Romans. So Jews go back to Palestine. Now people are saying, the anti-Semites are saying Jews go back to Europe, but the people in Europe are saying, no, Jews, you got to get out of here. Again, that's the evil spirit. Where are they supposed to go? You tell them to go back to Palestine. You tell them to go back to the region. You tell them to go back to British Mandate Palestine. You tell them to go back to Israel, go back to where they came from, and they do. And now you're saying they're colonizing and they need to go back to Europe because they're not real Jews. Now they're in Europe, and you're saying no, you got to go back. That is an evil spirit. How else can you? What is that? What is that rationale? So that's what's going on. That's how you get people like Myron Gaines, who hates communism, who hates socialism. But I would not be surprised if we saw this guy on the same podcast with Bree Joy talking about the Jews. As a matter of fact, we saw Candace Owens and Bree Joy were on a podcast together, talking about Israel, because that was the only thing they came together on. They were opposites on everything else. Bree is as left as you can get, and Candace is, I shouldn't say as right as you can get, because Myron seems to be to the right of Candace, but Candace is extremely right. But they were able to have a civil conversation on a podcast together. Why? Because they both hate Israel and they both have a problem with the Jews. It's we're living in those times again. You know, it's 1939 again. And I say this, and I'll say this again. Whatever you thought that you would do back then, however you thought you would respond to the pogroms in Europe, however you thought you'd respond to the Nazi rally that happened in New York in 1940 something. I can't remember the exact year. Whatever, however you think you would respond to those things, whatever you're doing now, you'd be doing then. Oh, it's different now because it's political and isn't. Nope, it was looking back on history is easy. It was easy then. The pressure was on, but it's easy to look back on it now and say, "Oh, of course Hitler was wrong." Oh, of course. I mean, that's obvious. That's easy. Of course, yeah, you can do that now. It's easy now. It's easy now here in the comfort of your own home to say, "Oh, if I was a slave back then, I would have told that slave master, you can't." You're saying that now because you know there's no way that we can actually go back in the time machine and do that. Chances are you probably wouldn't. Right? It's easy to say that now. But whatever you're doing now, that's what you'd be doing then. Why? Because back then it wasn't always cut and dry. There was propaganda machines back then, just like there are now. And just like the KGB, the Nazi Party propaganda machine, Joseph Goebbels, they were very efficient in what they were doing, which is why they were able to garner support from even some Americans. To the point even where I talked about this with a friend of ours the other day, a Jewish friend of ours. There were even American Jews who were against America intervening in World War II because they just didn't want to get accused of dual loyalty. Sound familiar? They just didn't want, yeah, but we don't want that stigma. Like, okay, we're American, we're American, we're American. Didn't help because there were still Americans who supported Hitler. So whatever you think you'd be doing, no, you'd be doing the same thing that you're doing now. The pressure was on back then. It was quote unquote complicated back then. There were things that you were afraid to say and do. The current was kind of against you, all that kind of stuff. So if you are quiet now, or you think that you're on the right side of history because you stand against Israel, I'm telling you, you would be on the side of the Nazis back then, and you would have all the same justifications. So just keep that in mind. All right. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. I want to, I think I told you guys, we told you every week, there's a radio show called Truth to Power Live with our CEO and founder, Pastor Dumisani Washington, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So we have a little ad commercial break here for you to check out this past episode that aired yesterday. So check it out, y'all.
It was Howard University, 1996, and Coates attended Howard University between 1993 and 1999. And our dear friends Charles Jacobs, who is over the American Anti-Slavery Group, held a forum at Howard University in 1996. Let me show you the video, and then we'll go from there.
Are there any other questions? Please.
That's Ta-Nehisi Coates. Circa, he's 20-something years old, 1996, Howard University.
Okay. All of the panelists mentioned, or I heard a few of the panelists actually mentioned that they would like African Americans to play a role in the fight against slavery in the Sudan. But recently, in his trip abroad, Louis Farrakhan, who was emerged as an African American leader, it is my understanding, made the comment that slavery did not exist or that it was at a minimal level in the Sudan. Now, the majority or the masses of African Americans don't really have a knowledge of slavery in Mauritania and the Sudan. I know I'm a college student, and it was definitely a surprise to me. So what would be the effect, or how could we combat such a comment by such a leader with such a high standing among African American people?
Panelists consisted of African nationals from Sudan, from Mauritania, both Christian and Muslim, who were testifying about the slavery and the genocide that was happening in Mauritania and in the Sudan. Now, context, 1996 is the year after the Million Man March led by Louis Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, 1995, right, in Washington, D.C. As the leader of the Nation of Islam, it could be stated that arguably his street cred and his name was probably never as well known, Louis Farrakhan, as it was leading up to and post the Million Man March, right? Almost nearly 30 years ago. Louis Farrakhan is holding great sway in the Black American community. Not that he does it now, but probably even more so back then. So a young Ta-Nehisi Coates gets up to the microphone after hearing the testimonies of these African men about what's actually going on. And Coates is aware that Farrakhan has been saying the opposite. Like you heard, there's no slavery in Sudan, or if there is, it's minimal levels. No, these guys got to talk about the millions of slaves and those who are being displaced. Again, this was nearly 30 years ago. Of course, that Ta-Nehisi Coates goes on to become the vaunted author and the world-renowned pop culture figure that I talked to you about before. And to our knowledge, and we did some research, we don't have any record of Ta-Nehisi Coates ever addressing, either in literary form, by speeches, whatever that's publicly available, ever addressing what he already knew to be true nearly 30 years ago now, is that slavery in Africa at the hands of Arab Islamic slave traders is real. He's known this since college. Islam spread through conquest and destruction, slavery, first and foremost, from the deserts of Arabia going west across Africa. The transatlantic slave trade ended in the 19th century. The trans-Saharan slave trade has not ended. Hence the slaves of Sudan, the slaves in Mauritania, the slaves in Qatar, the slaves in Saudi Arabia, the slaves in Libya, the slaves in Algeria. That region has been enslaving Africans for 1,400 years and counting. Coates learns about it in college. And according to what we've seen, has said nothing but has written about Palestine. Farrakhan's was a lie of commission. He knew he wasn't telling the truth. Coates was a lie of omission, because unless Ta-Nehisi Coates, who found out about the enslavement of Africans by Arab Islamists all over Africa back when he was a college student in Howard, unless he has addressed it, he lies by omission. Because not only are you not going to speak to that, and you're concerned about oppression, and you're concerned about exploitation and imperialism, and all those things, nothing about what's going on in Africa, and then you have the audacity and the unmitigated gall to call Israel an apartheid state. Israel's not an apartheid state. Hold on, bruh. No, it's not an apartheid state. What about Mauritania? You learned about that in 1996. The silence around the Arab Islamic enslavement, genocide, and displacement up to the millions of Africans, and by now for millennia, shows the moral cowardice and the enslavement of the mind to the progressive agenda that sees that somehow, if you talk about what's going on with Arab Islam and the enslavement of Africa, it's somehow Islamophobic. It's stupid, but it's also demonic. Because while we're wringing our hands about the right term to use, these people are still being slaughtered and enslaved by the millions. And folks who stand up, who act like they have consciousness, who think that especially if they consider themselves even remotely Afrocentric, say nothing. Why? Because the white liberal establishment doesn't want you to say anything. For all of your wokeness, for all of your independence of thought, you bow down to the altar of white progressivism because you refuse to tell the truth about what's going on, even if an African tells you himself.
Truth to Power Live with Jimmy Study Washington.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, again, Truth to Power Live every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Pastor Jimmy Study Washington is live on the radio. You can check out his latest article in our Substack, and that is entitled Ta-Nehisi Coates, Louis Farrakhan, and Black Apologists for Islamic Slavery and Genocide in Africa. Subtitle is Ta-Nehisi Coates Joins the Black for Palestine Deception, Part 2. Check that out, you guys. Again, this is kind of what things are hinging on right now, and it's important to really get this. It's not just that Israel's being lied on. It's not just that the Jews are being lied on. It's always, whenever there's this amount of deception going on, it's always because something else is being covered up. Something is actually being done that they don't want you to see. And in this case, it's usually the thing that they're accusing other people of doing. So Israel's accused of colonialism. Not only is Israel not accused of colonialism, the Arabs have colonized North Africa. Remember Arabia before the 7th century? It was a piece of land on the if you know your history, if you know your maps, You can see that it was a piece of land kind of northeast of Africa, northeast of Israel, right? In its own little place. The fact that we have what we call now the Arab world is because of centuries of conquest and imperialism and slavery. The Arabs in 1947, when Israel was fighting for its independence, it was fighting against the British, when Israel was fighting for its independence against the Arab countries surrounding it. Do you know that it was not the goal of the Arab leaders? It wasn't the goal of Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. It was not the goal of any of these leaders for there to be an Arab country called Palestine. Everyone there knew that Palestine was not even an Arabic word. It was a name given to the land by the Romans in 132 AD after they defeated the Jews, expelled many of them, and enslaved others. They changed the name from Judea to Syria, Palestina. Okay? Everyone knew that. It's so controversial that we're saying that. Everyone knew that back then. As a matter of fact, when you said the word Palestine back in the 1930s and 1940s, the average person thought Jew. There's a video and I didn't get a chance to share with our producer, but our friend Nialect made a video actually citing sources and documenting or showing you receipts of Arab leaders who detested the word Palestine. Detested the word Palestine. Not just didn't care or indifferent about it, didn't like the word Palestine. They rejected the word Palestine. There's an Arab leader, a politician named Auni Abd al-Hadi, and he rejected the name Palestine. This is him. This was a leader. This is back before Israel was reborn. He said, "There is no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term invented by the Zionists." Why is that important? It's not just important because of that alone. That alone is already enough. But then you see that not only is Israel not colonizing the land, but the Arabs were trying to. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, he was a Grand Mufti from, I think, 1921. He was the one who orchestrated the different massacres that happened to the Jews, the Hebron massacre of 1929, the Arab riots of 36 and 37. This man was friends with Hitler, friends with Heinrich Himmler. There's pictures of him at the concentration camps, pictures of him sitting down, talking with Hitler face to face, all those things. He was a pan-Arabist, and he believed his goal was to overthrow British Mandate Palestine from the British, and his goal was to make that region a part of Syria. He wanted to be considered Greater Syria, the southern part of Syria. There was no aspiration from any Arab leader to declare that region an Arab country called Palestine. And they weren't considering it that. They didn't like the word, they didn't like the term, and that was what they believed, right? So when you understand that, then you say, okay, then why did they want that space? Okay, let's look at the 7th century all up till now. Let's look at the Arab conquest across North Africa. Let's look at the slavery that's happening right now. It's a caliphate. The methods changed. So in 1968, after Israel won the 6-Day War in 1967, that's when the strategy changed. That's the first time we see Yasser Arafat, when he makes these documents. It was a declaration, right? This is the first time he's ever said anything like this. In 1968, this is what he says. It's called the Palestinian National Charter. He drafted in 1968, and the very first article in that charter says, "Palestine is the homeland of the Arab Palestinian people. It is an indivisible part of the greater Arab homeland, and the Palestinian people are an integral part of the Arab." Hold on a second. Of the Arab nation. Why are you saying that now? They're literally not only has no one ever said this before 1968. You have leaders right? Yasser Arafat himself was born in Egypt, so he's not even from the area, not even from that region. You have past Arab leaders who lived in the region of British Palestine who said, we don't like the name Palestine. It was invented by the Zionists. We reject it. Hajj Amin al-Husseini wanted Syria. He wanted the region of the British Palestine to be another part of Syria. There was no thought of Palestine as an Arab country. It wasn't a thing. When did it become a thing? In 1968. Why? Well, the reasoning is pretty simple. Well, if I say that we are Palestinian and that is our ethnic marker, then we can say that we were here first, right? Because the name was Palestine first. We'll just appropriate that. We'll take that and say this is where it belongs. That's what the whole. So when you actually see that, you can see that the reason for wanting to take the region, one, because the Jews were there, but two, to continue to expand. To continue to expand. How else do you explain what North Africa has become? How else do you explain the Arab Muslim slave trade of Africans in Mauritania and Libya, Nigeria, and Sudan? How else do you explain that? It's a conquest. It's a conquest. So when you have leaders like Ta-Nehisi Coates, as you saw in the clip before, who in 1996 was present for, that was our friend Charles Jacobs back in 96. I was 6 years old, with other African leaders, talking about their personal experience with slavery and jihadism where they lived in Nigeria, in Sudan. And you have leaders like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who was there for all of it, asking questions and everything, never once addressing it publicly anymore, and then deciding to write a book about what? No, about all of a sudden I'm in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I want to talk about the Arab-Israeli conflict, write a book called The Message. That's cowardice. You could also say that's maybe it's because of the money or whatever. But why wouldn't you speak up? You were there. So when you look at what's happening, there's a broader thing that's going on that needs to continue to be addressed. We even saw it being addressed. We shared this video a few weeks ago. Trouble in Paradise, right? There was a few pro-Palestinian activists, anti-Israel activists, who were making these videos coming after not just Black people, but coming after their Black allies, right? Black people in the anti-Israel space. And they were saying, you guys oppress us too. Black people oppress us too. You know, it was Black people also who went to Iraq and killed children and stuff. You guys are just as much our oppressors as white people. I was like, that's a pretty bold move, because I mean, you have Black people in your camp. And oh my goodness, for the next couple of days, there were just videos after videos of different Black activists, again, anti-Israel, people in the same camp, just hitting back hard. Like, first of all, one girl said, you know what, I'm tired of being an ally. If this is how you're going to repay me for being by your side all this time, then forget it. You're on your own. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. You have other people who were like, oh, really? So you want me to just bring out these receipts about the slavery that's going on? Don't think I don't know. There were some people in that camp that said, your guys' people enslave Africans. And we didn't say anything about it because we wanted to stand with you now with what's going on in Gaza, what we believe is happening in Gaza. We wanted to stand with you now. But because you want to do all this stuff, fine then. Let's talk about what you guys are doing. Let's talk about what your people are doing in the Arab world. And I was like, yep. And you know what? Even though their intentions were just to hit back at them, what we're hoping is that they continue to dig into that and see that it goes much deeper. It's not just that people who belong to their ethnic group happen to be enslaving Africans. It's that the whole tactic is to cover up for what's going on by pointing the finger at Israel. That's the whole thing. Kofi Annan talked about it. The UN Secretary General, he said, the UN's just been so focused. I mean, there's other countries like Sudan who haven't been able to say a word. There are other countries who are in peril, and every time we come together, there's another resolution against Israel. This man was not I'm staunch, I'm Israel high Zionist. He actually believed the resolutions. He was like, wow, this is terrible. But then after a while, he said, guys, we spent an awful lot of time passing resolutions against Israel and no one else can we talk. And he mentioned Sudan. He said they haven't been able to say a word. They don't even have the kind of voice represented in the UN like you guys seem to have. We're not talking about them. I mean, what? And that's what needs to be doubled down on. That's what needs to we need to continue to dig deeper on that. It's a real thing. So again, if you want to support the efforts in abolishing slavery in Africa, you can visit AfricanJewishAlliance.org. Look up what they do, and I should say what we do, because we're also partners with them, and I work with them as well. It's incredible work. A lot of the people on our team, some are former slaves, some are victims of jihadism, some like personal stories. We have a couple of videos up, and we'll have more coming up soon. Just of the different ones in our speakers bureau who have experienced and who have friends and family who are experiencing even now the slavery. There are millions of slaves across the African continent, and a large part of the reason why it's not being zeroed in on is because the slave traders are Muslim. That's one of the main reasons. And the other one is really ignorance. I mean, because it's being suppressed a lot. You go on YouTube ads, you see stuff about Gaza. You never see anything about slavery in Mauritania, right? And some of the slaves are Black Muslims. So in Mauritania, the main slaves are actually Black Muslim women. So even in the case of religion, Islam, they see Blacks as, even if they are Muslim, they see them as less than. That's why their word in Arabic for Black person is the same word they use for slave, abid, because that's how they see. So even if you're a Muslim, one of the partners on African Jewish Alliance, our good friend Dawood, he's a Muslim. He's a Muslim from Sudan. He's a Black Muslim from Sudan. He'll tell you how he was treated as a Muslim. It wasn't about religion. This is how Black Africans, this is how Black people are seen by the broader Arab world, unfortunately, and this is what the African Jewish Alliance continues to work to try and to abolish. So you can support AJA in the work that they're doing in that. It's really important, you guys. Now, I want to thank you guys for hopping on here and again following us. We're here every week, Monday at 8 p.m. If you've never heard of us before, you can visit our website, ibsi.org. We're streaming on all the platforms you see there: Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Rumble. Thank you guys for commenting. I see all the comments there, even the stupid ones who have nothing to add except adding some random LOLs and stuff. Appreciate that too. Appreciate the engagement always, because it helps get us more visibility. Again, you can go to our website and go to ibsi.org/dates, and you can see where we're going to be. And where we're going to be. We have some great stuff coming up in 2025 that will be on the website soon. Some really cool stuff all across the country, both in speaking and engaging and even with music and all that stuff. So we're excited, you guys, for that. I also want to let you know, I didn't tell you this in the beginning, but Randy Sandoli, who I mentioned in the beginning, who wrote the theme song for this, for our forum, that's Randy Sandoli. He and I have co-written an original Hanukkah piece called "We Remember." It's coming out soon. We're actually, that's funny. I told my friend the only thing we're waiting on one more thing. The one thing we're waiting on is our Israeli friend who's laying down some really cool stuff on there. So once that's finished, it'll be processing and we'll be releasing it soon. If you want to follow that release, it's going to be a part of a larger project called Returning the Favor, which was my idea of, a lot of my favorite Christmas songs were written by Jewish composers. And so I had an idea of why don't, me and my friend Randy, these two non-Jews, actually make some original Hanukkah music that everyone can sing. And so We Remember is one of them. And we have more coming that will be released in an album. The album will be released next Hanukkah, 2025. But before this Hanukkah, 2024, we'll have that single out. So if you want to be up on the release, join our mailing list. We'll put it up. Ipsy will share it when it's done as well. You can do that. All right, you guys. And then last but not least, again, just reminding you all, if you want to become a legacy builder or donate to Ipsy, you can go to ibsi.org/donate. You can donate one time, or you can become a legacy builder, which is a monthly donating. You can do a small amount, whatever you're able to do. We greatly appreciate that. You can scan it right now as you hear my voice. And we greatly appreciate it. It's been growing quite a bit. We've gotten a lot of new legacy builders over the past few weeks, and we really appreciate it. You guys, thank you for the support. It's not an easy road. It's a long road to really do this the right way. It's a longer road, but it's the right one. And so we want to do things right. And with your help, we can do that. So yes, thank you all. Tune in next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, same place. I hope to see you guys again, and I hope to see you in person. If you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, I hope to see you on December the 17th. And yeah, thank you. I see you, Paul. Thank you so much. Make sure to share this with your friends. You guys share it out, message it to people, text people, let them know, and have them tune in next week. All right. Thank you all. You guys have a good rest of your evening. Take care.